fabrication, assembly, and testing for ALICE, which is also an acronym. She'll tell you about that. But it's a UV spectrometer. Aren't you excited that I knew how to, because I actually have a guy who, in our friends, we have someone who actually works in that area, that is part of the Rosetta mission. Mrs. Pope was the systems engineer for the SWAP, which is the solar wind around Pluto, and the lead mechanical engineer for the ALICE, both part of the science payload on New Horizons mission. She was the mechanical systems engineer for the TWINS, which is another acronym, which stands for Two Wide Angle Imaging Neutral Atom Spectrometers instruments. Mrs. Pope served as the mission systems engineer for the IBX mission, and she has overall responsibility for the technical aspects of that mission. Mrs. Pope was recently recognized as a 40 under 40 accomplisher in San Antonio, so she's involved in many aspects. I did cut her bio a little short. It's much longer. We'll make it available online. But if any of you were questioning whether we were going to have a high-quality speaker today, I think you should rest assured you're going to learn something very interesting. So please join me as we welcome Susan Pope to the podium.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, so I'm going to have to consult notes too, because I'm going to talk about launch dates, and I don't remember when everything was launched. So as Sharon mentioned, my name is Susan Pope. I work at Southwest Research Institute, which is about 20 minutes from here in San Antonio. And I'm going to start out with just a couple of things about myself, and then I'll move into the really fun stuff about rockets and instruments and things. So about me, I was, I need to switch the slide. Let's see. Let go. All right, we're good. Okay, so I'm not under 40 anymore. So I just turned 40 this year, so I can't claim that anymore. But I was born in England. We moved here. I grew up in Houston, so we moved here when I was 5. And I don't have a British accent because I went to kindergarten in Houston, and they didn't really like the British accent. So my mom does, though, and my dad does. And in '92, I graduated from Jersey Village High School. I also went to an engineering camp in between my junior and senior year at University of Houston. And to me, that was one of the important things for me to understand, what did I want to do? I always liked science and engineering, or science and math, and I broke the curves on the calculus test and things like that. But I was like, well, what do I want to do? And so it really helped me sort of focus in on what kind of engineering do I want to do, how do I want my career to go? And so I focused on mechanical engineering pretty much because, again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and mechanical engineering is very broad. So I graduated in '96 from UT Austin, and right after that I started working at Southwest Research Institute. And I fell into the job. I wasn't a space junkie, I am now. Some people that work there in our space science and engineering division have always loved space. And I've always loved space, it's cool, rockets are cool, right? But I ended up sort of fell into the job, and I love it. I've done so many different things, and I apologize in advance. I tend to talk a little fast whenever I talk about what I do because I love it so much. So I try to slow down to the point where I don't think I'm talking fast at all, and then it's a normal speed. So just as maybe something that you might think of in the back of your head next time you give a talk. But anyway, so I've worked there ever since '97, so I've been there a little over 17 years, served many different roles, as Sharon said. And while working there, I decided that I wanted to go into management. So instead of just focusing on the technical side, I decided I wanted to go into management. So that's when I got my my engineering management degree also from UT Austin. And I have been a manager for a while. I was recently promoted to assistant director, and then, of course, the 40 under 40. And then I just recently passed my project management professional exam. So I don't know if there's any other PMPs in the room, but it was a very challenging exam. And I'm really glad I did it. It's interesting how you can pick little snippets out of things that you sort of go to a training class for and apply those snippets in the different parts of your life. So that's about me. And when I'm not, let's see, make sure that flips. They got pictures on it? Okay, cute boys pictures. So this is just a little about me. I didn't realize this would be live streamed. I didn't tell my husband that his picture is going to be live streamed. But so the picture on the left is me in a triathlon. So that's what I do whenever I'm not with my family or working. And I have a 5-year-old. So we stopped at 1. That was a little decided how he starts kindergarten. I can't believe he's going to start kindergarten. He's this tall. And we travel a lot. So I'm very fortunate that I travel for work. In sort of unfortunate and fortunate because you stay away from your family, but I get a lot of frequent flyer miles. So I get to fly my family to different places. So Casey's already been to Colorado, I think 4 times, and Florida. And since I was born in England, I have family there, so he's been to England. And so we're very fortunate that we're able to do it. And I exercise not just to stay in shape, but to stay sane. When you're really busy, I find that you have to find something to relieve your stress. And to me, exercise is what I do. So some people like to focus, sit down, do yoga, stuff like that. I'd rather go out and run. So that's what I do pretty much 6 days a week. And I have to force myself to fit it in because I don't. I really do feel it. Okay, so now to the fun stuff. So this is, I mentioned earlier, I work at Southwest Research, and I work with really, really great scientists and engineers. We are about 300 in our division, and most of them are scientists and engineers, although we would never be able to do our job without our technicians and our administrative staff. They're amazing. And the thing that I always think of whenever I'm talking about my career is how important it is to focus on the that did switch, didn't it? Okay, good. Is to focus on the non-technical side. You get an engineering degree and they don't teach you how to write, but you got to write a lot in an engineering, and you have to present. I never took a speech class, and when you present technical, it's easy because you know your technical stuff. But whenever you do something like this, or I was in the planetarium show that they had out at Scobie, and I had to stand in front of a green screen and read what was going in front of me, and it was hard. It was very hard, much harder than designing instruments, because I did that every day. So and then reading, you of course have to read a lot, and then of course there's the math and science, the technical side that you got to know, of course. And then the other thing I didn't put up here, actually I did, it's the very top one, I just forgot to talk about it, is interpersonal skills. Being able to work with different types of people. In the world out there and in school and wherever you are, you'll notice that people have different personalities. So you realize that in order to work with somebody, you have to treat one person different than another person. And that's one thing that they really hammer into you in management, but it's something that's very good from a perspective of living in the world. You can't treat everybody the same. You have to approach somebody differently. As a woman, as Sharon mentioned, as a woman, you have to realize that some people don't necessarily like that you're ahead, but you just have to deal with it and go on. So, okay, so fun stuff. I have built instruments that are orbiting Mars. I don't have pictures of those. Orbiting the Earth, orbiting and on their way to Jupiter, on their way to Pluto, and on the way to a comet. So I don't know the count of the instruments that I've designed, but I spent the first pretty much 6 years or maybe 8 years of my career specifically designing instruments. So, the scientists have an idea, they tell the engineer the idea, the engineer goes off and designs it and tells the scientist, well, you can't do all of that. It just doesn't work. You can't build it. And so these are pictures. Let's switch to a bunch of pictures. All right. So these are some of the pictures of the projects that Sharon mentioned earlier. So IBEX is the Interstellar Boundary Explorer, and everybody should have stickers, and there's some, hopefully they're on all the tables. There's not enough for everybody, I apologize, but I also procrastinated, and so I just ran around this morning at 9:30 trying to get as many stickers and giveaways as I could find. So I think there's enough IBEX stickers, and if you turn them on the back, they have information on the mission. There's a little a paper model that you can make of the magnetospheric multi-scale spacecraft, and so those are, again, I think there's only 5 of those on the table. So those are just fun things to do. You can go on the web and you can print a lot of this stuff out. NASA does a very good job at education and public outreach. So where things are, so IBEX is one of the, I worked on the mission, I worked on a couple of the instruments on IBEX too. TWINS is the 2 wide-angle imaging neutral spectrometer. That was launched, there were 2 spacecraft that were launched, and that, I didn't write down when that was launched. I think it was launched in 2002. And I was 8 months pregnant when IBEX launched, so I won't forget that launch. That was October of 2008. And then IES and ALICE, and ALICE is actually not an acronym. So that's okay. The scientist that that was our lead scientist for ALICE, he just liked it. He just liked the name. He thought it was pretty. So next to ALICE on New Horizons is an instrument called Ralph. So some of you may get it, some may not. But anyway, so we didn't actually work on Ralph. We worked on ALICE. Ralph was an imager. And SWAP is solar wind around Pluto. And I don't have any pictures of the spacecraft. But my next slide goes through and tells you sort of where everything is, which I thought, this morning as I was looking it up, I thought it was pretty cool. But MENA is the first instrument I ever worked on. So MENA on the bottom right is a medium energy neutral atom instrument. And I started working on that in '97 when I didn't know what the magnetosphere was. Now I don't really know what the magnetosphere is, but I can at least say it and spell it. I mean, I can sort of explain what it is, but I think if a real magnetospheric scientist heard me explain it, they would probably tell me, what are you talking about? But other people, you understand it. It's the area around the Earth that protects us from the solar wind is pretty much what it is. It's how our magnetic fields interact with the solar wind. I do have a little picture of it on the next slide. So we'll go to the next slide. And this tells you where some of them are. So I'll start with the one, so the top right picture is showing the magnetosphere. So you can see the lines that are on that picture are the Earth's magnetic field. And everybody's heard of the aurora, I'm sure. And so on the top and bottom of that, where you see where the lines come together, that's called the cusp. And that's pretty much where the aurora is. And what the aurora is ions and electrons that are flowing down those magnetic field lines, interacting with the atmosphere of Earth. And that's one of the things that we do a lot of studying. The scientists that I work with, we study that magnetosphere. And the IMAGE mission, which is the one that MENA was on, that was the first one that it was a really groundbreaking mission. It actually rewrote textbooks on the magnetosphere because they were able to discover a lot of things. And by the way, that's probably the most rewarding thing about doing what I do, is hearing about the missions in the news. Turning on Discovery Channel and seeing one of the scientists that I work with talk about how the IMAGE mission, which I built one of the instruments on, is discovering things about our magnetosphere. So it's very rewarding to hear that and know that you designed that little bitty part of it. I mean, it may just be a little part, but at least you helped with it. So the next one that was launched, I think it was New Horizons. Let me check my checklist here. Nope, Rosetta was launched first. So Rosetta is actually a European Space Agency mission, and that's the one that Alice was on. And Alice was my first experience with realizing that I was designed things for space. I remember I got a call on a Saturday night after Rosetta launched that the door didn't open. And I'm thinking, what do you want me to do about that? It's out there in space. But luckily, NASA and ESA requires that you do a lot of redundancy. So we tried to fire the door once, and this is in order to actually get light into the instrument. We had to cover it up because of the contamination, and you have mirrors in there. You can imagine mirrors don't like particles falling on them. That sort of messes with the optical properties a little. But so I got a call, and they fired as I was on the phone, we could hear the mission. You could hear the mission operations center getting the call that they had sent the command because they have to send the command out there to open the door, which is with our second signal. So our first signal didn't work. First command didn't work. The second command went out, and then you got to wait a few minutes because the signal's got to go out to the spacecraft. And then it's going to come back to the mission center. So I knew it came back when the big roar went up in the room that was excited because the door opened and they were able to see counts. So that was sort of my first, wow, that's really weird because what I built is way out there and you can tell it what